Patriotism. By Dylan Freed. Fascism is nationalism on steroids, amphetamines and bath salts. Muscular, energetic, and it'll eat your face off. Any sane person who has even lightly perused history frets a return of this hyper-nationalism, not to be confused with patriotism or a healthy love of nation, and it's perfectly understandable that many are ultra-sensitive and antagonistic toward any political group, even faintly resembling it. However, in our vigilance against such a nationalist ideology, particularly from the right, we have allowed another type of face-eating nationalism to come into being. How can there be two types of nationalism, you ask? Well, this other nationalism is what we might call obverse nationalism. But the best term for it, I think, is patriotism. Patriotism. Patriotism is like fascism, but turned inside out and upside down. Instead of chauvinistic adoration of the state, there is a hysterical, irrational loathing of the nation. In the mind of a rabid nationalist, the state is the center point around which all of life orbits. In patriotism, the state is also the center of life, but in place of kneeling to it, they'd like to destroy it. In fascism, the citizens of the country are thought to be genetically superior superhumans. Conversely, in patriotism, one's fellow citizens are believed to be historically and exceptionally terrible people. To uber-nationalists, the country's history is all glorious, and any crimes committed are justifiable. Any failure was caused by weak men and traitors. On the other hand, to patriots, the nation's past is nothing but an endless tale of felonies, tortures and oppressions. In fascist states, the physical land, the actual geography of the country, is thought to be sacred, magical, and often viewed as bequeathed by God to an elected people. While on patriotism, the nation's land is cursed, stolen, and haunted. Psychotic nationalists create police states where there is constant surveillance for low patriotic spirit. Patriots are politically correct morality police who demand you loathe the nation too, or else. Fascists view most other nations and peoples as cowardly, dirty, and worthy of contempt or subjugation, while patriots often view other lands, usually tyrannical states, as alluringly exotic ideals. Nationalists drape themselves excessively in national paraphernalia, but patriots will never display their nation's flag, unless it is to stomp on it or to burn it. Extreme nationalists arrogantly promote their culture, while patriots mock, diminish, and/or deny their culture. Fascism worships the government and its leaders, while patriots view their government and leaders as reincarnations of history's most abhorrent evildoers. Note that both fascism and patriotism are prone to conspiracy and scapegoating. Typically, the right wing is paranoid about a small cabal machinating behind the scenes, while patriots often irrationally fear the workings of malign, invisible forces. Of course, the left can believe in tiny, secretive cadres pulling strings, and the right in ubiquitous dark forces at work. Lastly, though I could go on, fascists worship violence as a way to demonstrate vitality and bravery, while patriots love violence also, as a show of revolutionary will. You might ask, where does patriotism come from? Chronologically, it seems, in America at least, it began to set in the 1960s and 70s. A confluence of factors led to fanatical patriotism, the Vietnam War, the spread of postmodernism and far-left ideologies on campus, and of course the palpable racism of the Deep South. In the 80s and early 90s, the hate seemed to wane some, but in the aughts, patriotism came roaring back after 9/11 and the Iraq War. Many of the most prominent post-9 patriots had been indoctrinated in the 60s and 70s. Intellectual climate. Interestingly, another source of patriotism began in the late 90s to early 2000s with the rise of left-wing political comedy shows, which made it seem sophisticated and hip to denigrate the country. In the 2010s, the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown led to the promotion of critical race theory, which had been somewhat contained in the university, to a national audience. Critical theories, like postmodernism, are by default extremely anti-American. This decade also saw the election of Donald Trump, which escalated patriotism further. Trump was a catalytic agent for the movement, as the caricature they hysterically held in mind of an American fascist essentially sprung into being in his person. In the 2020s, patriotism reached some of its highest levels ever, after the death of George Floyd and a slew of lies about policing in the United States. This then metastasized to commentary about the general nature of America being pervaded with white supremacy. More yet, January 6th helped patriots recruit new members and confirmed to them that their disgust with the country was warranted and that the nation and many of its citizens were, in large part, fascist. Note that January 6th could also be seen as a right-wing version of patriotism. How prevalent is this nation-hating movement? Well, first we should note that there seem to be two levels of patriotism, white-hot and lukewarm. The white-hot patriots are that 71% of progressives who think most laws and major institutions need to be completely rebuilt because they are fundamentally biased against some racial and ethnic groups. The lukewarm patriots are that 88% of young people, 18 to 34, who, according to a recent Gallup poll, feel no great pride in America. So I'd estimate it's tens of millions of people, perhaps 15% of the population. It's a very large movement and seems to be growing. In sum, it's sickening and boggling how many people in America truly despise or simply dislike the country. I'm the first to worry about the rise of right-wing chauvinistic nationalism, but we are in denial if we don't think that left-wing patriotism isn't an equal, if not more dire, threat. It, too, is a type of nationalism on steroids, amphetamines, and bath salts. And yes, it also wants to nibble on your face.